Talk and talk and talk and talk.
All right, Kingdom. Here we go. It's 7. We're a little bit late. We're 5 minutes late, but it's 7:35. Welcome everybody to episode 5 of our CDL podcast. Icon here. I'll talk about my intros here in a little bit, but as always, joined up at the top by Kingdom Soldier, co-host. So welcome, Kingdom. And our guest for today, super pumped to have Ashley, or I've been saying this all day because it's kind of one of those things that's ingrained in my head.
I know what you're going to say.
It's so hard not to say Ashley, or I'm sure you know where I'm going. Yeah, right. But we're joined by Ashley from the Minnesota Rokkr, or Midnight, head of content over there at the Rokkr. So Ashley is an OG for OG, one of those staples in the Call of Duty community. So we are super pumped to have her with us. I'll just say personally that I'm super happy that you were able to find a role. It just seems to fit you perfectly. We were talking a little bit before the show, just kind of how things have been going for you and how it's basically taken over your life and all that. But Ashley, I just want to say welcome to the show. We're happy to have you today.
Thank you guys so much for having me. I've been a Kingdom Soldier fan since the sticks, so it's awesome to come on with you guys. I'm excited anybody who's in the community that's making content. I love podcasts. I love seeing like stuff like this pop up in the community. It just keeps that live feel going, right? Like you always have people kind of talking about what's going on. I listen to podcasts I'm like 30 minutes away from work, so I listen to podcasts every day. And even though my job is like kind of, I'm ingrained in Call of Duty here all day and like the CDL and stuff, I even listen to it on the way to work. It gets me like hyped up to kind of like, see where other people's heads are at and everything. So Anyway, long story long, thank you guys so much for having me on the show. I'm excited.
Awesome. All right, so we're going to Icon, did you want to slide in your stuff?
Yeah, sure. I'll say it real quick. So my name's Icon. You can find me YouTube, Twitter, Icon Nation. So either place, if you search it, it'll pop up. So yeah, just what I do is on YouTube, I essentially like to think of myself as like kind of like a community coach in a way, I guess. I mean, that's something I've been thinking about. It's like, what exactly do I do? But essentially I just take gameplay and I put a little map up in the corner and I really break down like what I see, because I realized when Call of Duty went to 5v5 that this game gets really hectic and it gets really fast. So that's what I do. Is I just put a mini map. I break down the gameplay. I'll pause games and say why players are going where they're playing and stuff like that. So Icon Nation on YouTube or Twitter. That's where you can find me. So yeah, that's
great content. Great
I'm
content.
Have to check that out. So you're breaking down like COD League games and stuff like that?
Yeah. Yep. I'll just watch like anybody's POV that's up on Twitch, and then I'll just record over top of it, put a map up in the corner of the screen, and then draw on it with arrows and show where people are going and why they're going where they're going and stuff like that. It's pretty cool.
That's awesome. I'm like genuinely gonna check you out. That sounds cool.
Cool.
It's what he does well. It's amazing. Is like, for me, it helps me understand what everybody's supposed to be doing on the map. And what I like about your content, Icon, not to shamelessly plug it, but is that, well, you do a good job. You're not shy, like, to say the Huntsman should have done this, or,
a
Abizi should have gone through this way. And that is like a community coach, because you're not afraid of speaking the truth. And I've seen a few pro players, make some comments on your videos on Reddit and stuff. And so I really like the content. It's unique. And it's refreshing. So
so just one last thing. So Call of Duty has kind of always been my hobby, but my professional career, I'm actually I'm a teacher. So I think it kind of goes hand in hand, like my hobby and then being able to explain what I see. I think it's just kind of a meeting of two worlds. It matches up naturally. So yeah, kind of cool.
Good job, bro. All right, so we're gonna start the show, Ashley, with a section that we like to call First Five. And so basically this is going to be 5 questions that I'm going to ask you that I have not showed you before. And I want you to just answer kind of as quickly as they come to mind.
Oh my God, like rapid fire, or just like, because
not rapid fire though.
I am notorious for saying the first thing that comes to my head. It's terrible.
I want to hear that. I will have no problem.
Well, this is live, so I'm excited. What are the questions?
Okay. All right. And then I will preface this by saying I want to spend a good portion of the show talking about what's going on with Minnesota, everything you're doing at the Rokkr. Of course, a few of my initial questions here might tinge back into the OG era of your life.
Oh, of course. I mean, we have listen. I mean, you've been around. I've been around. There's a lot to cover, to be honest. Like, honestly, 2 hours isn't even like enough time. Like, there's so much that we could go on and on about. So I'm down for
absolutely
past, present, future, everything.
All right. So first question, what is your favorite Optic gaming memory?
Oh, dude, I don't know. That's so hard. I mean, and it's hard too because like a lot of it, I mean, I was a part of the team, but I still feel like on the deep down, like watching some like these guys like win some of those tournaments, like win champs, win X Games, win COD XP, like those are like when I think of great Optic moments, I think of those. I think of like Vision. I think of like Predators when he's back on like Favela getting like 1v5 in them and stuff. Like I think of that stuff. But like selfishly, my own favorite memory within the team, man, I don't know. It's just there was a lot. I think one of my favorites was, and it's kind of like it's definitely a funny thing that I actually have it down here on this bookshelf, the Optic book. So we had like a whole book, which is, I mean, if you just look at the faces were on the cover of that, like what an incredible story that was. So I think obviously like printed book, and down to Chicago School. I think, are you guys still there? Okay, I froze. Am I good? We're good.
Yeah, you're good.
Okay,
yeah,
sorry.
we're good.
My whole thing
You're
froze,
good.
and I felt like I was talking into ether for a second. But yeah, so man, I like meeting up with the guys, doing book promo, the streams, the IW stream where we raced to Prestige, or we attempted to. Those were cool. But when I think of like my favorite Optic moments, and it sounds kind of dumb, but it's really just like playing, finding my footing in Modern Warfare 2 when I was like blowing up and Optic was blowing up, and sniping was like, that was all I thought about back then, right? Like that stuff, I can't even pin it to one moment. Like there's so many great Optic moments throughout history, whether it's in the videos I got to do because of it, or any experiences I got to have, like being I think I was at like the COD champs where we ended up placing third, go figure, champs in third place. Third place champs. So that one was cool because it's like cool to like go out with them when they they're on a high, but they still have to play the next day.
Right.
I don't know, man. There's a lot of cool memories. I think I look back on my time at Optic like super fondly, of course.
It's like one big great memory.
Yeah, it truly is. And truly, like everything that I learned, even whether it's about building my personal brand or esports, content in esports, the community, how things seem to work, like all of that snowballed over the last 9 years and threw me into what I'm doing now. And so like, I can't even like pick a single moment where I'm like, that's it. That was the best,
Yeah.
If I had to pick a favorite moment in a video, it would definitely be the Mike's already taken 4 bites, no BS. That's probably my favorite Optic line in history when they're eating their Big Macs. I don't know. That was pretty. I don't know, man. There's so many great Optic moments.
There's I was watching I think it was a couple weeks ago. I was watching a try not to laugh montage of just Scump.
What is that a thing?
Yes, and it was 20 something minutes long. Sheesh. I lasted 26 seconds and I was laughing. And then I laughed for 20 straight minutes. Like it was ridiculous. It was every funny thing that he's done. Like now everybody's gonna go look for this video, but
yeah,
it's just like a link. It's a hilarious video. It's a try not to laugh, which I don't think, like I'd like to see Big Timer try it because he does those on his channel. It'd be interesting to see him try not to laugh at Scump. Okay, second question. What is the best sniper rifle of all time?
Intervention, easy.
Ooh, second, love it.
Only first place by a little bit over the M48-3. And I mean, there's nothing crack the intervention. It's just, I mean, I'm hitting the pre-snipe on high rise.
Partial to the M40.
I'm getting the M40 is great. I mean, that is iconic. But I think I picked the intervention because I actually didn't even start sniping until Modern Warfare 2. And I remember when I started, I literally decided. I told my buddies who was trying to like teach me on Rust. which is it's just so crazy to think about that now. Like this is where like I somehow started this career path that I didn't know I was starting at the time.
Right.
Yeah, I started sniping. I decided I was only going to use the intervention. That's it. Only snipe for 30 days. And I was playing way too much Modern Warfare 2 at the time. And I became so used to that gun. It's ingrained in my memory. I've probably used it maybe the most. Maybe the MSMC I've probably used the most, but yeah. Oh, I got my cat here.
Yeah.
Yes, by the way.
On Black Ops 2, I think I used the DSR 50 the most. Like I sniped a lot.
Vondi patched it. Can't believe you did that to this day.
Yeah.
I mean, I know why he did, but like, dang man, hurt my feelings even still.
It was an amazing weapon, and like
It was
the Modern Warfare 2 intervention was my first sniper as well. And I'm trying to see what the heck Goalie's putting in the chat. This might be it. Okay. Oh, the Scump video. Okay. You can post it in the Twitch chat if you want. So intervention was my first gun as well, and it changed my life. It like I tried COD 4 and I just couldn't keep up, and I didn't think about sniping. I just everybody was killing me. I was dying so fast, and so I went back to Halo and then played Modern Warfare 2 and picked up an intervention, and my life changed. It was like, all right, Halo, I'm sorry, I'm gonna have to go play some Call of Duty now. And ever since then.
There's just something about how the scope looked, the cool camos you're able to put on. I love a Blue Tiger intervention, the sound it made. I mean, the
sound, yep.
The Car 98 in World at War sounded possibly cooler, but dang, like I just the intervention.
No, the intervention. It's it. It's the gun. Okay, agreed.
But
all right. Yes, I mean the M40 is a great gun. I saw a pool, and there weren't many people that said it, but somebody said they liked the MSR, like that was one of their favorites.
The Midnight Sniper Rifle from Modern Warfare 3. That's what I called it.
Yes,
I used that a lot too. That was good. I wasn't too big of a fan of Modern Warfare 3 sniping because of how quickly you could make the scope come to your face with quick draw or whatever. I thought that was a little extra. It made it a little easy.
It was pretty easy.
Yeah, I mean, it was a lot of people's like intro to sniping too, which that's awesome.
Yeah, that's what's weird about the scene these days. Is I have to remember these people, like they came in at a year when I had been playing Call of Duty already for a long time, and so it's just it's like, different.
I used to think like I was in this like club and just everyone else started during COD 4, but now like even like seeing the chat, they're talking about like, yeah, the one from Ghost was amazing, and I'm thinking there's like 17 better sniper rifles than like the Lynx and Ghost. No offense in the chat, but yeah, like it's cool to hear kind of like I think everyone's first Call of Duties. That's like your first love, right? You know, it's like the first COD is always this more special one. So if you started in Ghost, there's nothing wrong with that. But you're uncultured. I'm just kidding.
Kind of. She's being nice. Yes. All right. Question number 3. So you, in something I was watching, you said you actually told Optic J when you guys were towards the end of your time there that your dream job and what you might wanted to do was to manage a team.
Yes.
To manage content creators, to be on the corporate side of gaming rather than the content side.
Yeah.
So my third question is, how does it feel to literally be doing that?
I mean, I told the leadership at Optic at the time that that's what I wanted to do. I think maybe they just weren't in like a position to like maybe already had people in those roles and they were like, I don't know, like you don't really know, and maybe they were just like, oh well, you're just a content creator, like what? But for me, like it just made sense to evolve my career that way, right? Like to still be involved in content, but have the understanding of all of this time and effort that I've put in until now, and like understanding the space.
Right.
I mean, literally, like if we would have been sitting down having the same conversation a year ago, I would not have been able to even like make up the scenario that has just happened to my life in the last like 8 months, right? Like it's just insane. Like I'm sitting here with logos on my hat and my shirt that like didn't even exist 8 months ago. Like I didn't even have a name. It's just a thing. Like I moved home from Texas, which is where I was working with Optic Gaming at the time. I moved home. I moved down there for like 2 years, moved back home. Obviously that wasn't going to work out. You all saw what happened after. Knew that was coming. Moved back home. A month later, I see on July 1st, this team gets announced, right? Like Minnesota, the ownership, the Wilfs are teaming up with Gary V, who the Wilfs from the Vikings. For those of you guys that don't know, I'm a huge Vikings fan. I've been since 1998. Showing my age a little bit, but I've literally been watching the Vikings since 1998. I love the team. I love Minnesota. I was happy to move back home. It wasn't even like a tail between my legs thing. It was like, I just want to be home and I need to be there. And so when I heard about this team getting announced, I'd already like had this idea in my head of like, yeah, I would like to evolve my career. Like I love creating content. I love streaming. That was kind of like what I was spending a ton of time doing at the time. But I knew that like I'm about to turn 30, dude. Like I need to evolve. I'm not at my final form yet. I'm only turning 30. That seems old to a lot of gamers, but like it's really like when you're supposed to be finding your stride, right? So I knew like the idea of what I wanted to do. I had no idea that any of this was going to happen, but it has, and it's, it seems to be working out pretty well for me, which is, it's fine. And as far as like in the context of like, yeah, I told these other people that I wanted to do that. I'm glad that I didn't end up in something with them, because look at where I'm now. Like everything,
right.
I know it's corny to say that everything happens for a reason, but like everything has worked out just fine. So I have no complaints. Like if no complaints that if whatever, they didn't take me seriously or they didn't have space at the time to do that, like that's okay, because I'm so much happier where I am now. And I love it, dude. Like it's just insane to me. It's still like, I literally pinch myself every day. I have to.
It seems like for you to kind of say out loud what you want, like some people say that all you have to do is, tell the universe what you want and say out loud and it'll just come to you. But it's literally like, I mean, within a year ago, you didn't see yourself I don't think you would see yourself in this position.
No, I couldn't have even made it. Like I said, I love the Vikings. I love Minnesota. I couldn't have said, oh man, you know what? I think the Vikings should buy a COD League spot. That'd be sick. And then I somehow get involved right away. That'd be sick. Like literally getting to the ground level of this thing. Like I couldn't have even made it up to be better. And then like everything that happened after with like, having a big hand in recruiting the players and watching the brand get unveiled. Like this is the beginning of what's going to be like a massive franchise, I believe. And I believe that Call of Duty and esports is going to grow to be this thing that we're going to look back in like 20 years and say, holy shit, you know what I mean? Or holy crap, sorry. So
Too late.
Yeah, I knew it. I told you guys I might say the S word. I'm so sorry, because I say it all the time, but I apologize. But yeah, it's just, we're going to look back on this and be like, wow, it's so awesome.
No, that's great. I've been very impressed with the Rokkr, and some of the other questions that we'll kind of ask throughout the show will involve like your role in your hand, which was a lot more hands-on than I think people know, unless they actually have watched the podcast where you talked about it.
Yeah.
You were like, you were in there, like making the phone calls and doing the first line of interviews, and I didn't know honestly that you had that level of engagement with choosing the team. Everybody, I think from the outside kind of thought it was mostly Brian or something, and I'm not, discounting what he's done and the input he's added since you guys put him on.
No, but I mean, Brian had tremendous input. So just to kind of, do you want me to kind of lay it out? Is that the first question, or can
No, but go ahead.
We'll speak on it for a sec. So obviously, man, I wonder, because I have a lot to kind of tell you about how we got to that point. Besides just like, I built most of the roster. So
we're here to listen.
So obviously, like, so I'll just take you through the timeline. July 1st happens. At this point, I've moved back home for 1 month. I had some health stuff going on. Not a great time of my life. July 1st happens. I hear about this. I'm like, holy cow, like this could be a thing. In my head, as soon as I knew I was going back from Texas, in my head, I was like, I'm pretty sure. And that's when the whole like IGC sale thing was happening. That's when I was like, I'm pretty sure this isn't going to be like a thing. Like I'm going to have to at some point leave Optic, which guys, I literally never thought was going to happen. Like I just was like OG for life. Like, I mean, Hector was too, like everyone was like, we're in this for life. We're family. And we were, and I still love those guys like family. Like I still like, am connected to them. I think we'll always be connected in this like weird story of life that's of things that's happened to us. But I knew that I was going to leave, and I heard about this Minnesota team. I immediately like obviously get their attention on Twitter. They have like 2 followers. Like I follow them, like start engaging. So obviously like they would be silly to not like at the very least try to work with me in an influencer capacity, right? And like they're like Brett Diamond, the COO, he's literally employee number 1 of this joint. He's worked closely with the ownership in the Wilfs that, during July and like June when they're kind of prepping for this announcement. Like he's worked so much on this team, and so he got into touch with me from the Rokkr account, and I was like, yeah, sure, I'd love to have a conversation. But obviously, coming out of the situation in Texas with Optic that I had, I'm sure you guys know like a little bit of background of how that whole thing went.
A little bit.
Not amazing. It didn't go took according to plan, to say the least. And so I was a little nervous because I was like, I've seen big money come into esports. I've seen them, think that they know what they're doing, or like have some sort of system that they want to try and put in place in esports and see if it works. And so I was a little nervous, like, man, like obviously the Wilfs are like, they've done amazing things, especially for the Vikings. Like they've helped build US Bank Stadium, which is where the Vikings play. It's, in my opinion, like one of the best stadiums in the NFL. They just built this insane practice facility in Eagan, Minnesota, which is, we're on the same campus of that facility now. So like I knew like the Wilfs are obviously like they put the support behind their ownership. It's not just like a novelty thing. So I kind of had an inclination of like, okay, this is serious. Like they're very serious. But I still was like, who's running the show here? Like who's, you know what I mean? Because like I said, I've seen management come in and it's a little weird sometimes in esports. So I have a conversation with Brett Diamond on the phone. He's sussing me out, feeling out my interest. I'm like sussing him out, feeling out the interest of this team. At the time, it wasn't called, Rokkr. It was just called like Call of Duty Minnesota, COD-MN. And so we had, a couple phone conversations, went back and forth a little bit on like, hey, like, what are you trying to do? And I told him what I want to do. And he told me what they want to do. And they actually kind of had the foresight, which this is one of the things that made me take them pretty serious, especially from a content perspective, is Brett told me that they had been kind of filming some of their meetings that they'd had with like, kind of like a fly on the wall scenario. Like they just put a camera during some of their meetings, like where they're talking about like literally like this thing's being born in the meeting. You know what I mean? And and we still haven't even released some of that stuff, right? Like just, but to me, it told me that they have the foresight and the seriousness that they really want to like be in on this, right? Like they're taking this seriously. They want to provide content. And that was just, I got on board right away when I heard that. Like I was like, I mean, like, you sound like you're saying amazing things to me. So I had to jump. And so, sorry, this is kind of like a lot of context to go into building the roster. So
go ahead.
If Brett's employee 1, I was employee 2, right? Like that's literally like what it was. Like I would go to Eagan where he was working with the Vikings at the time, but obviously with common ownership with the Vikings, like, he was kind of transitioning over into this role and he was still there. So I get to go to the Vikings facility, which is just bucket list thing for me. Like I was just so like literally I love the Vikings. And so I go there, I meet with him. They start to tell me that their strategy for this is going to be kind of going to mimic like traditional sports. They're going to hire a GM, and then they're going to hire a coach, and then those people are going to build the roster, which like on paper, like not a bad plan, dude. Like you guys kind of know what's going on. But with how free agency ended up happening, it happened really close to the end of COD Champs. If you guys remember, it was in like that August or July, sometime period like that. So I think it was August. So there was like not much time for, because these still, obviously there's a lot of like coaches and GMs that are still like working with these teams right before champs. Minnesota can't really come in there and just say like, hey, want to like work with us? Like it's just it's not a good time. It'd be like contacting an NFL team during the playoffs when they're trying to get to the Super Bowl. Like it's just, you just don't like, you know what I mean? Like it's just weird. So they didn't really want to have like a shotgun wedding with a GM and just like really marry themselves to this person who's now going to like have to be like that person for them and help them build the roster. And when we started working together, like we'd had conversations, we decided how we were going to work together, especially immediately. And I knew that the GM position was open. I applied for it because I wanted them to know that like I was really serious about working with them. This wasn't like a short-term thing. I didn't just want to like do an appearance and then peace out. I wanted to be really serious about it. And so they I think took that really seriously. And once free agency kind of started upon us, like we'd kind of been looking at coaches together and we'd been, thinking about a GM, but I think like we decided to table that because I went in there and I said, listen guys, like I know how Call of Duty is. Like the pros kind of click up with each other. They tend to really, and it seems kind of weird to say it like that, but it's really true. Like, especially if you like if you would have had some of these conversations I had with these guys, like they are they know that.
They're like
they
buddies.
know that
Yeah.
they're buddies, or they know that they have like a certain like bargaining chip, right? And so I let them know, like, traditionally, like, we've never even had a roster mania period like this in Call of Duty, like, not to that level where almost everybody's a free agent off the rip, right? Like, that's insane. So I knew
Bananas.
that people were going to start to clump up, and they did, right? Like, that's what ended up happening during roster mania for the most part. Some people unclumped from each other, which I wasn't expecting, but for the most part, the people who were kind of clicked up together really stuck with each other, right? And so I let them know that, like, hey, I don't know if choosing a GM, even if you choose me for that right now, is your best idea. And I don't know if choosing a coach, especially because, I mean, you guys know the relationships that some of these players and the coaches have.
Right.
Like, if you pick the wrong coach, you might be
You
alienating
exclude
a certain
players.
player, or if you know what I mean? And so I mean, and you should have heard some of these guys, like, they were saying wild stuff, like they're like trying to get a job, right? So I'm just like, hold on now, like let's really make sure we think about this. And that's kind of the approach that I feel like we took when we were building the team, is like, we're not going to make any, you know, rational decisions. We're not going to be the flash in the pan signing. We're not going to be the people who are going to come in there and just like just really screw it up right away, you know? And so we did end up getting a coach, Brian Saint, who is amazing, by the way, and assistant coach Jake, aka Rep, and I don't know if you guys know him on Twitter, but he's amazing. So he's the assistant coach and lead analyst for the team. We brought those guys on after we'd had the original core 3 signed. So our original core 3 that we ended up signing was Silly, Assault, and Goddard X. And we felt really good going in to the rest of Roster Mania with that crew, with that core.
Yeah.
And then once Brian Saint came on board, he was the one who was like, dude, Alex is that guy. You know, we really like to see him, obviously, at that time. So I built, I guess, the core part of the roster, but I think the rest of it, I give credit to obviously the coaches, because that's when we brought them in, and that's obviously like, they know what they're doing at that point. Like they did a great job building the rest of the team and kind of preparing the team for the season.
So, okay, man, I have these 2 other questions, but I want to know, because that comment you made a second ago, you said it in another video, and I never had thought about it. Like, every professional player became a free agent at once. Like, I can't imagine that in any other sport. Like, that's just bananas.
Dude,
and I
right?
can't I can't imagine how that process was for you. And I guess my question is, like, what were the things you were looking for when you landed that first 3? Because you had to sign those yourself, and I'm sure you may have talked to 40 players, 20 players. I mean, I don't know, but
it was a lot. Yeah, it was pretty much every like big name pro, even not from just the big names, but even down the list, right? You need to talk to everybody. You'd be doing this franchise a disservice if you're not talking to every single person that you can.
Good point.
And as a player, if you're not talking to as many franchises as possible, you're doing yourself a disservice as well. And so, you know, one thing that I found interesting during the free agency period in all of my conversations was a lot of them were really similar. I had a lot of the same questions. They had a lot of the same questions. Where do I have to move? Do I have to move? Like, that was the number one question. But sometimes I would run into, you know, players who actually, like, I could tell, hey, this guy's thinking like 3 years down the line, 5 years down the line, even more.
Right.
Like, they are looking at this more than just like the next month of their life, right? They're looking at like the huge picture. And that was really interesting to see through all my conversations with the pros. Like, some of them tried to, like, I could tell I was being sold. Like, they were like, I've had sales experience, so I would get like, okay, I get what you're doing. Like, you're trying to like make me buy in. I get it. And I don't think there's anything wrong with that. Obviously, you're vying for a spot. You're trying to explain yourself. But I think where I had me and Brett, I was mostly taking the calls with the players, but sometimes like we would both be on the phone, or we'd get to that second call level where, like, you know, Brett he had a great understanding of the rules, a great understanding of contracts and how they kind of worked. And he was able to kind of help in places where I lacked. Like, we really complemented each other well during the free agency period. And that was one of the things that I thought was really cool as well. Like, because we really were coming in brand new. And I was thinking about it in my head. I'm like, man, if I wasn't here to like call BS on this, like, Brett might not know fully like what to think, you know? And like, he caught on really quick. Like, I was able to come in there, like I came in there with a list of names and you know, groupings and cores that we'd maybe want to go with. And, you know, they learned quick, ownership learned quick, Brett learned quick. but there's so like, how do you condense like, 6, 7, 8 years of history into like one little meeting, about a roster, right? And so what was your original question? I'm so sorry. I'm the worst at answering like one question.
No, you answered it right. I was asking how you landed the original three. Like what
So
like when you're looking at all these different people, like
yes.
what narrowed it down to, okay, these are the guys we want to go with.
So I think I have a pretty good understanding, and especially like in that time, I mean, we were 2 employees, right? So our culture hadn't even been built at that point, and it's still being built every single day that we go into work. It's still being built. But I had a good idea of the type of people that ownership wanted. We want those players because we did want them to move to Minnesota. We're providing this amazing facility for them to come to every day. We're making sure that they're taken care of out here and that they feel like great about where they live and everything. So we wanted to make sure that we had guys who were going to come in and grind. And every pro, they're going to tweet like, I'm about to grind. Are you though? Like, are you? Like, let's see. And so that was one of the things where I wanted to make sure we got guys who were able to work together as a team, willing to put in the time and willing to put in the effort to improve. And that's one of the things like about our facility, like we think is one of the best things about it is that we're taking it seriously. Like everyone on the staff is taking it seriously. When the players come in, we want them to take it seriously. So when you ask me like what we look for, and it's hard to say in a phone call, like if you see these things or not, but you can kind of tell.
Right.
Like obviously Silly and Assault, for example, like I've known of them for a really long time. Just less than a year before, at the time, they had won COD champs. Assault was MVP. Like they won out in World War II, which is the most recent boots on the ground game at the time. Like it made sense to me to really take them seriously during the roster mania period. And then that you get to Goddard X, who I say this so much, and I don't even mean to say it as like a pat myself on the back thing, but Goddard X is so underrated. He was so underrated in roster mania. I couldn't figure out why, especially if you take into account recency bias, how well he performed at champs. Enigma 6, I hope I don't get this wrong, but they placed top 4, right? Like nobody expected them to do that. And I felt like it was off. I mean, the whole team played great, but I felt like Goddard X was really a strong point of that team. And his S&D stats all year were great. Like he is criminally underrated. I think it's because he isn't like super buddy with a lot of the pro players. He's not like always in the tens and joking around on Twitter. Like he's kind of a quiet guy. Like he stays to himself, but he's really respectful, like really good guy, stand-up guy. It sounds kind of corny, but like that's the type of player that we want, is that player who's going to be selfless, who understands that it's a team game, it's a team grind, and he has the skill to back it up. And I mean, it's easy now. It's much easier to talk about the roster now because, they've performed decently for sure at obviously the launch event and in Atlanta. Like it makes a lot easier for me to talk about the roster because like for some reason I couldn't understand this. Like I saw when we announced the roster, the comments that would happen, and I'm thinking in my head, I'm like, these are people who follow this really closely and they're saying like this team is trash. I just don't get it. I'm like, are you sure? Like it didn't make me second guess myself, but I was like, are they paying as close attention as I think they're? Am I paying too close of, you know what I mean? Like I was just like, that's wild to me, right? And so, and you see it now, like the team is performing pretty well. Obviously we're not there. We didn't get what we wanted in Atlanta. We wanted to win that thing. I think we could have won that thing if a couple of things go.
You were in position. Yeah.
We were right there. So obviously super excited for LA this weekend, but we were looking for, to answer your question. I'm sorry. I could go.
No, you're fine.
I could talk. I love podcasting, so I could just talk, but we were looking for those type of stand-up guys who are going to come in every day and grind. They have the talent. That core right there. I believe it's championship caliber core. Yeah, they don't have the most Twitter followers ever, but that's why I'm here. I'm here to help build content around them. At that point during the roster period, I think I'd mentioned to Brett, like, I would like to do a content focused role when we're through the roster period, because I just kept thinking about like, dude, what we could do this with these,
right?
You know what I mean? Like I was just so excited to start making content with these guys, and you're already starting to see it. Like people are starting to get to know Alex. People know Asim from last year, but now they're going to get to know him even more. Like there's so much to learn about these guys because they have the skill to compete, and they're grinders. I love that.
Yeah, they like. I've learned a lot from the content that you guys have produced, and it's been so consistent. And like you said in your earlier episodes, like you guys were just before everybody else. You know, you're just like, we're gonna catalog everything. You guys are gonna have like you almost are gonna have a living videography, like kind of a almost a mini docu-series on the development of your brand. And I know we talked
Truly.
before the show about developing a brand versus a team versus a roster, and there are teams within the league that are definitely just a roster right now, and maybe in the future. And you had talked previously about players saying, how much am I going to get paid, who am I going to play with, and do I have to move? You know, those are the big three
Yes.
questions. And I can see, like, even Enable he was on the podcast this week with Nameless and Pac-Man, and he said he's changed his mindset, and now if he has an opportunity to go to another team, he'll move the next day. But what he kind of portrayed was maybe during Roster Mania, he was not a player that wanted to live a specific place. Like, I want to live in Los Angeles. I don't want to have to move, you know, that kind of stuff. And I think that, like you said, that can come back to bite you in the foot. You know, you can be on a team you really don't want to be on because you want to live a certain place. And so I think you guys having a certain like core values and culture you wanted from your team is why you have a team that really fits the brand. And I've said this before, I think the Minnesota Rokkr are going to be the E-United of, if I can say that. And what I mean by that is you guys are going to be the team that everybody loves to root for. And like
you
it's
low
almost
key
like
want us to win. Like, you might be a
exactly.
Huntsman fan, but like low key,
Low key.
the Rokkr does pretty well too.
Facts. Yes, and I low-key, little teeny part of me wanted the Rokkr to beat FaZe, but it was the tiny part because I wanted
We'll
to see
grow
the
on you, too.
storylines
We're
of
gonna
FaZe
keep
in Chicago. Well, you guys just don't stop. Your content just keeps flowing, and it's good. And GodRx is like Tim Duncan. You know, it's like if you had to pick a top 10 player the years that Tim Duncan was in the league, a lot of people wouldn't name him, even though he was a GOAT. People just didn't.
Yeah, like the stats are there. He's there.
Yeah, he just was so quiet and, hey, I'm Tim, you know. And so I think GodRx reminds me of that, where it's just like he talks with his gameplay and he talks well. Like, he's done an amazing job so far. And they say that every team needs this one person that can kind of shine in the moment. And a lot of people at the beginning of the season were like, who is that for Minnesota? And it's like, this dude has just really stepped up. So I've been impressed. Okay, so two more questions. One is, you said you had mentioned in the past that YouTube changed your life drastically. And I just want to kind of ask, like, if you had to reflect on that, like, how has YouTube changed your life? How has it changed Ashley's life?
Dude, it changed everything for me. I mean, honestly, like, I started doing it just for fun. I saw other people doing it. I'm like, well, they could do it, I could do it. But I haven't seen that many girls do it, so I'll do it. Like, let's go. And then I'd find like other women doing the same thing. I'd be like, that's so cool. Like, you're doing it too. Let's go. I felt like I mean, it just started from a place of love too. Like, it's easy to say now, like, if you look at a big Twitch streamer, a big YouTuber, you say, oh, that's sick. I want to do that. Like, I could do that. I want to make mad money and do that. Like, at that time, like, there was no monetization on YouTube for random people like me. Like, it was like, I didn't even see the trajectory before it happened. Right. So I mean, obviously timing is everything sometimes in life, but I was doing the right thing at the right time too. Like, I was grinding. I was putting in the work. I sacrificed a lot in my life to do it, and I took it really seriously. And obviously, like, joining Optic super helped. Like, being a part of that was amazing in that culture. But at the end of the day, like, YouTube, sharing my life, you know, with fans. I mean, it's gaming that you're sharing, but it's also like, I was telling them like a lot of stuff. They were sharing back with me, and then obviously when I got on Twitch, like, that kind of back and forth really made me happy too. Like, that sense of community that I would feel. I'd see the same people in my chat every day, or I'd see the same commenters on YouTube. Like, they would say a funny joke and I'd be like, ha, like, you know what I mean? Like, there's really kind of like a rapport that you start to build with these viewers that you have. And so YouTube allowed me to be creative when I otherwise probably wouldn't have been, like, with, especially like, I mean, it's kind of nerdy, but like making a Call of Duty montage was like an outlet for me at the time. Like, it was something that I like really had a passion for and wanted to do, but I fell into this kind of career path because of it. So it changed my life, not only in the sense that I got to meet really cool people from around the world, whether I ended up meeting them in real life eventually or not, even just having that conversation online is cool. The creative outlet of like creating something that I thought was cool, and obviously like some of it's super cringy, and I look back on it now and I'm like, ew, you know what I mean? But at the time, like it was a really cool experience for me and a really good outlet. And then obviously like growing it into a career path, you know, paying as close of attention to esports as I have, like I really viewed watching Call of Duty tournaments as like I was getting ready to watch a sports game and everything. Like
Yeah.
it's nerdy as heck, but like I love it, dude. Like YouTube changed my life in a positive way in so many ways.
Awesome. I'd say same. I'm gonna let Icon, aka Shane, ask the last question before we go to break.
All right, I'll pop back in here. So last question, because I know this is obviously such a part of your story and your come up, but how does it feel now when you go to events, when you travel places, when you watch scrim, stuff like that, to see Optic and there's no Hex, there's no you, there's not all those names that kind of brought the brand to what it is today? So how does that feel just kind of as a whole?
It's definitely weird. I mean, I even still, when I'm referencing a Huntsman match, I almost say Optic because I just always think of Seth. And I almost say like Optic. Oh wait, you know, like who's that? You know, like, no disrespect, like Optic, they really do have a strong roster. They're, I think, gonna be okay. They're gonna turn it around. I don't think they're gonna turn it around against us this weekend, but they'll eventually turn it around and start to get some points. They really do have the team. They have the team to kind of do it, or at least the foundation there to turn it around. But yeah, it feels weird, man. Especially like I was at the Armory in Minnesota at the launch event weekend for the COD League, where I saw Huntsman playing Optic on stage, and I was just like I'm the third party at that point. Like I'm Rokkr, okay? So I'm like, I have like no skin in the game, but truly I kind of did, because I was like, low key, I hope Huntsman wins. Like, it's you know, it is what it is. Like, I don't wish any ill will to the roster of Optic Gaming, the staff that they have, the content that they're creating is actually like pretty funny. Like, but it's weird.
Their content's been good.
That was us for a while, and now it's not, and it's definitely weird. But I'll let them rock. I'm rocking, so let them rock, I guess.
Cool. One more thing real quick. It's just something I was thinking about as you were going through one of your answers earlier, but I was watching a lot of the clips from your watch party from the Atlanta event. What was that feeling like when you guys went up 2-0 in that match against Atlanta? Like, that place had to be going crazy.
I mean, it was, we had a watch party. We had it in real life for the Paris versus Rokkr match. But because we didn't know the schedule the next day, or even like we didn't know we'd be in the semifinals, right? Like there's no way to plan that. And this was our first watch party. So we didn't have like a lot of live one. I don't like the place that we had the watch party at, Billy's on Grand. Shout out. I'm going there this weekend, 12:30 p.m. We're playing Seattle. See you guys there. Billy's on Grand, St. Paul. Okay, sorry. But so they showed the first match against Paris, obviously. That was where you saw like a lot of that footage from the crowd and everything. And then on Sunday, obviously, we're not able to like plan the schedule. So Billy's was showing the matches, I believe, all weekend, but we weren't like all there during every single match, because then we'd be living at Billy's, which I'm not opposed to, but that's not how it shook out. So I actually was watching the match from home, and I was working the Twitter and kind of making sure we had all of our content ducks in a row. But the feeling, obviously of us going up 2-0 against FaZe and knowing that Hackney Dom was next, that's one of our pretty strong maps. We did lose that map to Huntsman the day before, but I felt really confident. I think the team did too. Like, I really felt like, holy cow, we could do it. Like this could be it. And I probably just jinxed it by thinking
it was so close.
I've thought the same thing about the Vikings a few times. So we're right there. We can do it, dude. But the Hackney Dom went the way the Hackney Dom went. FaZe is just they're so talented. If you make one mistake against FaZe, it's over for you. And we did. We made a mistake, but it's comforting for us to know, like, it was our mistake that we feel like led to the L on Hackney Dom, and that's something we can resolve, right? Like, if FaZe is just too good and you get your butt beat, like, what can you do about that, but try to get better. But when you make a mistake, you can try to learn from that, and that's one thing that we've taken from it. But to answer your question about like the atmosphere of the watch party, like we were there during that first match against Paris because of the group that we were in. We were in there with Huntsman in Toronto, so obviously not an easy group. We knew, I think, instinctively, like we are likely going to have to play Huntsman, so we have to come out and win against Paris, because if we don't win against Paris, we're really putting ourselves in a rough spot if we end up playing the Huntsman. So the atmosphere, I mean, to be honest, like we had a map or a match time change. So we were originally supposed to be there for, I think, 10 or 10:30 in the morning on a Saturday, that's not bad. Like that's brunch time. You could go order a mimosa, get a little but then our match got changed to 9 a.m. So we were arriving at like 8:40 a.m. to this bar. They opened early for us. It was sick. And in my head, I was expecting like, oh man, the time changes. Like, who wants to wake up early on a Saturday to go watch Call of Duty? Like, I don't even, like, this is our first watch party. Like, we didn't know how it was going to go. I show up, there's like not enough parking spaces. Like I might have taken the last spot in the parking lot. Like my mind was blown. I walk in there, we're putting more tables and chairs to accommodate these people. The match hadn't even started yet. Like I was truly, truly blown away at the watch party that we had the first time. And that just, I mean, it just like really, really like stamps down like our foundation that we're building here is like Minnesota takes to its teams, and we love it. Like we couldn't believe it. So we hope that the next one, we hope the next ones go awesome. We are going to this time try to, obviously, if we make it to Sunday, I will be there, and I will be there watching the matches with you guys, because the idea is, you want to have like a party the whole time that you're playing, and you could play up to 4 or 5 times if you're really doing hot in the tournament. So hopefully I'll be at Billy's all weekend this weekend. It's going to be a good time.
I will say I totally agree with you. I watched, I can't even tell you how many scrims, how many hours of scrims I watched. I really thought that Hackney Dom, I thought, wow, they're going to pull it off, especially since that's one that Atlanta is not super strong at. In fact, we had a Tatch on last week, and I told him, I thought that their win over Atlanta and that Hackney Dom that they had, that was like one of the most successful, that was one of the most surprising and most dominant performances that I've seen in the CDL, them taking that on opening weekend. So I was with you. I was surprised. I was actually pulling for you guys. I wanted to see the upset, but it was still good either way.
Yeah. I mean, we had the good side too, right? Starting off, we got a lead. So in my head, I'm like, all right, like I don't, like in my head, I never think that, okay, we've won until like we've literally won. Like someone will need to be like, hey, Midnight, we won. And I'll be like, okay. I didn't hold my breath, but I was just like, holy cow. Going into the second half of that, I was feeling really good. I mean, obviously, like I said, FaZe, it felt like they kind of just flipped a switch right when we made a mistake. They just took advantage, and you know, if you're going against the best team in the game, you can't screw up.
No mistakes. Yeah.
Yep.
No, it's been awesome to kind of talk to the guys, you know, since then, like, how you feeling going into LA? And like, I was talking to God RX today in the kitchen at the HQ, and he's like, feel really good, you know, feeling really good. And like, of course he's going to say that, but like, I really felt like he meant it. Like we made eye contact and everything. Like he was like, feel really good. Like, I don't want to say the rest of what he said, but he told me that they're feeling really good.
Well, that's good. That's good. All right, guys, we are going to take a 3-minute break. When we come back, we're going to be talking about some of the changes that have happened to rosters, the 5 different players that are going to be playing this weekend, and how that might impact the outcomes. We're going to do some predictions. And if we have some time, we will be asking a few more questions of Midnight. So if you have some, put them in the chat, respond to my tweet, and we'll try to catch them for you so that we can ask them later. But we'll see you guys on the other side of 3 minutes. We'll go straight into that icon, and then we'll move on. We'll follow.
All right. So welcome everybody. Hope you enjoyed the first 5 that ended up taking an hour. Is what it is. No big deal.
It's supposed to be the first 5 minutes.
Like the first 5 questions.
Maybe like 20.
Okay.
Yeah. Who knows?
Yeah. It's whatever.
It was the best one we've had yet.
For sure.
Awesome.
All right, so moving on from here, there were some roster changes. We were going to go pretty detailed into like who is replacing who, what they're good at, all that stuff. But rather than do that, we'll just kind of say what's happening and then kind of our thoughts on it overall. So 3 teams ended up making changes. So Seattle went with Pander over Enable. I guess I'll just mention KDs real quick. So Enable had a 0.87 KD overall, hasn't been really playing all that well in Search and Destroy. but is what it is. LAG went with Blast, Vivid, and Spart over Aches, Lacefield, and Saints. Again, KD is all sub 1, so all players that probably need to be performing a little bit better. And then one that I was a little bit shocked by, New York made a change, put Happy in for 0. So those are kind of the 3 changes that we're going to be seeing going into this weekend. One thing that I'll say just kind of overall, and then I'll go ahead and I'll open it up to you guys on what you think, but I'm a little bit shocked by this. I don't want to say that it's too early, but I'm a little bit surprised that teams are already making changes. And because, I mean, if you think about it, these teams really haven't even had that much of an experience yet or a time to gel with each other. Especially when you have, I mean, you're replacing some pros that have been around the scene for a long time with basically AMs, right? I mean, all these guys are 20 years old, 18 years old, 22 years old. So a lot of the changes that are being made. Now, the other side of that is that we are already like a fourth of the way into the season. So a lot of these teams that have, the 10 pro points, like a lot of these teams, they have to do something to get points this weekend, because if they're not picking up points this weekend, then it could get a little bit out of reach really quickly. So I guess I see both sides of it. For me personally, I mean, I don't know. I'm not in those back channels. I don't know what's going on in those organizations, but I'm just a little bit shocked that a lot of these teams have been at 2 tournaments and you already have all these changes going down with team morale and stuff like that. I was probably most shocked with Enable. I know we've talked about it a little bit here earlier and a little bit last week as well. But even watching tens and stuff, like I was watching Simp play the other night and stuff like that. And Enable's in there dropping, 30 and 28 and stuff like that. I mean, he's playing really well. So is that a change in mindset like we talked about earlier? Who knows? But yeah, I was just a little bit surprised to see it overall. Hopefully those teams that made changes can come out and perform a little bit. If they really start to struggle a little bit more, then there's probably going to be a lot of questions going on inside those orgs. But overall, Kingdom, will throw it to you. What do you think roster change wise?
So it seems like the teams that are making changes, and Ashley would know way better than me, are teams that maybe didn't have a clear mindset on what they wanted for their rosters. In terms of, you see the Rokkr is one version where it's like, we want players that are going to fill roles that are not going to get stuck on, I have to perform a certain way. They're not worried about, well, my contract's more than your contract and more than your contract, and now we have to switch teams. Like, they had a specific type of player they were looking for. They were looking for like a duo they could form around, or to kind of keep some people together that are already clicked up. And then you have like the Huntsman, where it's like, and I know they did not get everything they first planned on getting. I don't think any team did, but I would say for the Huntsman, like, they're forming a team around Seth. They kind of knew that was going to be their key player, and how do they form the best team around him? They've done an exceptional job. I think FaZe, I know they wanted other pieces than some of the ones they got, and so they had a target in mind, but what they ended up getting was a great product. It's like this young, scary, fast, trying to be ahead of the game team that just plays search at an exceptionally high level. But then there's other teams where it's like, what identity were they trying to build with this? You know what I'm saying? Like, London even has a brand and an identity of a type of team. They got the Twins on there. They've got some of the EU's finest, And so when I think about some of these teams that we're talking about that are making these trades, like Lag, I don't know if they tried to form a roster around Pat, but it's a little, he's not the same caliber of Seth where you build a team around him, in my opinion. And so when I look at these trades, I think they're attempts at franchises that are really in, the only other franchise you could throw up there that would make a change that hasn't already, because Toronto already did, would be OGLA. But they know, and all of us watching know, that team, when Maven said they could easily be a top 3 team in this league based on paper before the season, he was absolutely correct. Like, I don't know what they have to figure out, but I applaud them for giving it another shot. I do think, I agree with what, the peanut gallery, that if they don't show up in LA, there's going to be a change. They don't really have a choice, when you're, and I don't know, Ashley, how much you guys talk about standings as a team or champs and things like that. But when you're a team that does have 10 or less points, which is 5 teams in the league, LA is an important tournament for turning that around. The mid-season sprint is in April. It's next month. There's 3 tournaments 3 weeks in a row. After that, we're going to easily be able to tell like 2 or 3 teams that are not making champs, and maybe 2 or 3 that are. We'll know by looking at it, and it'll be a wild card fight for the rest of the year. So I think these changes are, you got to do something. You see this in the NBA when they fire coaches and everybody's like, why would you fire him? He was great. But it's like the team is just trying to send a message to the fans, like, we're doing something. We're trying to make a change. And I don't know what you expect. Like, I look at LAG, but how are they going to play against Optic LA? It's kind of like a brand new roster, 3 new people, and so it's going to be interesting. Do I think Pander is going to make an impact and Seattle's going to beat Minnesota? No, I don't. I think what Minnesota stands for is a methodical style of gameplay where they know what they're doing and they know where they need to be on the map. And figuring out your roster is not there. I don't think they're going to be in a position to beat that team, but that's just my opinion. Now, Octane knows where he needs to be on the map, and he does it exceptionally well. And some of their other players do, I believe. And if Pander's been grinding, I mean, congratulations on your engagement. But if he's been grinding, we'll see. But I think, and again, Ashley, I'll hand it over to you, but Minnesota seems like a well-oiled machine, which is why before Atlanta, I picked them to come out, because I was like, there's just something about this team. Like, they can, like, I know London, I know Paris, we've seen them, but there's something about this Minnesota team that I believe, and everybody's saying at the beginning of the season, they're top 4, they're top 4, they're top 4, they're top 4, they're top 4. In scrims, they're top 4. And Minnesota's like the only team not bragging about that. Like, hey, we're top 4. Just don't forget, guys. They just talk with their gameplay. So,
first of all,
go ahead.
We don't think top 4 is something to brag about. Like, we're there to win, dude. Like, and I know that sounds so corny, but like,
no,
these guys were not happy after Atlanta. And like, I was a little bit happy after Atlanta because, like, finally everyone else can see what I see in this team, right? Like, I see that we're right there, and so I'm glad that people got to see that. But yeah, we're not happy with top 4. And just to like speak on some like the roster kind of movement over the last couple of weeks, like, Enable being benched, especially for Pander, doesn't really surprise me that much. If it maybe since Enable's coming out and saying like, and I have no like insider info on this. It's just me just like theorizing, just like you guys. Like, if he's coming out and saying, yeah, like, I need to take it more seriously, like, maybe that might have been something that either the franchise or his teammates, that was their gripe. And so maybe this was them being like, dude, you need to get your stuff going here, right? Like, so maybe that's like, I don't know, like the insider baseball with that whole move, but like, that's just from a surface level of seeing him being like, yeah, I need to like double down and grind. Like, this franchise opportunity of the league kind of just making everything more official, like, this sends a message not only to Enable, but like to all the players in the league. I mean, you see like LA Gorillas, like Pat, I mean, he's at the forefront of their promotions, as he should be. He's an icon in the freaking community, but like, he's benched. Saints is benched. I was kind of surprised that they benched Lacefield. I know he doesn't have the best stats, but I felt like he made some impactful plays for them. To your point, Icon, like, yeah, they're being replaced by literally 3 AMs. Like,
yeah,
that's crazy, Like, that is crazy, right? Like, so we'll freaking see what really goes down. And it's crazy it's happening before their home event, because I mean, as a team that put on the first event, I know how crazy, obviously when you're a player, you're not really thinking about like how the events run, but just from like a staffing standpoint, like you have to put on an event, dude. Like, and I know it's shared with OG, but like still, like, there's a lot going on there. And so like, for that big of a change, we'll see how they come out. I don't think that it is too early, because I mean, especially previous years of Call of Duty, you'd kind of have that like first roster mania after the first major. So not surprising to me that teams are already like, oh man, because to your point, it's time to like the point when you're looking at the points kind of stacked out the way they are, you're not really thinking about the playoffs yet, but after April you will be. And these points that you're getting right now they're important. So, I mean, yeah,
Yep.
we did get top 4 at Atlanta. Cool. Pat on the back. We did also leave with 20 points, and that's crucial, right? That's going to be crucial towards the end of the season. So I can totally see why teams are already kind of switching out their lineups and stuff like that. Not super surprised by the Enable thing, especially based on what he said. Like, I need to take this more serious. It seems to me that his team told him that, like, we need to take this more serious. I don't know if that's even true. That's just me, like, surface level.
He did say it.
Viewer. Okay.
Yeah.
And then, you know, the LA Gorillas, I've always kind of thought that they're swinging, trying to see what hits, you know? So maybe this is another swing to see if it hits. New York, I was a little surprised. I mean, like, I don't mean that in like a way. I just mean like they're trying to, like Toronto too, like with their 10-player roster, like they're swinging, you know, they're seeing what works. And that, like, I don't think there's fault in that. I think it's definitely an interesting way to go about it, and we'll see. Like, maybe LA Gorillas kind of start to be that like pipeline team, you know, where it kind of like where they bring up the AMs and give them like a chance, I guess, to kind of see like having like a majority of your roster come up from the AM scene. That's pretty unprecedented. I don't think we've seen something like that other than like an amateur team making it from the open bracket, right? And then New York, kind of confused. I thought Zero was pretty good. I don't think the issue there. I'm not sure what the issue is. I'd be interested to, I mean, I'm sure like a year or two down the line or however long, like it'd be interesting to sit down with Revan and hear like what's kind of really been going on that first year. But yeah, I think I mean, you guys are totally right. Like, now's the time to start kind of grasping these points. Like LA, I mean, there's so many events now. I think
but you guys only have 9 each, right?
I think so, yeah. Yeah, so every like match is so weighted, right? Like, if you don't get out of your group, you have no more chance at the points on Sunday. And if you do like win, you get an extra bonus. Like, there's the points are the big incentive here, right? I mean, obviously like the storylines and the viewership, like all this stuff with that, like, and you know, knowing, oh my gosh, like this guy's gonna play against this guy, like that's very exciting. But at the same time, like it's about getting those wins and those points, right? So I could totally see why teams are starting to make moves already. I'd be interested to see like when the first trade happens. I'm gonna be pretty excited about that. I'm not sure like how that's all gonna go down, so I'm kind of excited for the first like COD League official trade. I wonder like if it will be one of those teams where they require you to live there and it's like he moves in and stuff like that.
I think it's honestly, I think post LA, we're gonna see at least like 2 trades. I just am anticipating some surprise outcomes. Like maybe a team is gonna lose first round, but then make their way into the bracket, or into the finals bracket. I mean, but I think unfortunately some of the teams that are kind of like way down, that have storied rosters with massive amounts of followers and exposure in the media, but winning does matter in this league. And you can tweet out as much as you want about my products and about my sponsors, but if you're not going to be on that champ stage, like I got to make some changes to make that happen, because that's the biggest stage. That's where we're going to have the most viewers. That's where the most money is going to be spent. And the organizations are going to shine at that event, especially because it's so limited with how many teams are going to be there. Like champs for those teams, it's going to be like it's going to be like a world final type of event. It's going to be huge. And I applaud all of you guys that are already like crunching numbers and looking at, okay, so I honestly believe your team will win one of these home series. And I think any team that wins a home series puts themselves in a huge position to make it to champs if they can just get
points, dude.
That's exactly, it's massive. Like the Huntsmen didn't even make semis and they're like, yeah, we're cool. You know, or they didn't make the finals, sorry. And they're like,
I mean,
yeah, we had an off event, we're still got 90 points.
I mean, and it's hard to tell the future, but like maybe in that playoff picture or champs picture, whatever you want to call it, like when the teams are like 10 points apart, that, you know, oh man, that off event is having like ramifications.
And
right?
Well, you know what's going to have the biggest ramification is the teams that didn't get 2 wins in Minnesota. Like, honestly, I think that's what's going to come back at the end of the year. We're going to be like, if I just got those 20 points, if like for OGLA, like losing both matches, like that's going to come back to bite them. I mean, it already has, they would be above 5 teams if they just won their matches in Minnesota. And so it's unfortunate because how you come out is how you come out. Fortunately for the Huntsmen, they stuck it out and did the same thing at the next event. And I think that's what I'd say again about Minnesota is you guys have been consistent. And so to make a change, like these roster changes, or these, what do we call them? Rosters. I guess you can call
roster
them changes.
Movement, yeah.
Moves, yeah.
Changes.
Substitutions. Right, exactly. Changes to the starting lineups. I think the risks that these teams are taking is like, if LAG takes this risk and says, it's like when you empty the bench and put your starters down because they're just not doing what they're supposed to be doing.
It does feel a little early to me for that. Like, F it. Like, not that they're saying that. Like, we don't know we don't know.
I don't know what's going on. Yeah.
Who knows what conversations are being had and what's being decided and why. We're just on the outside, right? So, yeah. But it does feel early for them to be like, all right, 3 of you out of here, especially like that. That's impactful. And I think that has a greater impact on even more than just the Gorillas. Like if you're
you're right.
Any other player in the league, you're looking at that like, dude, we gotta grind. And just to tie it back into the first half of the show, like that's why we wanted those guys who we knew were gonna, if you take an L, you don't let it hurt your ego. You try to improve as a team and you grind it out. You grind through that. And that is one of the most important things that I think you can instill in a team is that belief of like, we can grind through this. And so, I'm not saying that that's like, if stuff's going wrong, you just grind through it and try to figure it out. But, 3 of your starting seems like an interesting move. We'll see how it goes. I mean,
I think what you said about Aches is the big deal. Like, to sub out Pat, he's the face of the franchise. Yeah. Him not being on stage with his antics is going to make a difference in the event. Like
I'm bummed. I'm honestly bummed.
Yeah. And so it's going to be, to me, I think it is a huge branding risk for them as well. But that means there had to be some infighting or something had to be going on for them to make that drastic. And I did hear, rumor from the podcast is that I think it's Saints like benched himself. And so that wasn't necessarily planned. It was kind of like, oh, you're going to bench Pat? Well, I'm going to bench my, I don't know. None of us know exactly what went down. But it sounds like one of the players benched themselves. And so, and I know I don't think Aches would do that, but it's going to be interesting. Honestly, it's going to be really, how do you scout against a team that you've never seen them play together? It's going to be really interesting.
And forgive me for not having the knowledge on this, but are these 3 players that have come on to LAG now, were they on the same team together or are they like really kind of getting fresh with each other too? Like they're all kind of fresh together.
They're all kind of fresh. Like Vivid played with Pander earlier in the year at your Challengers event. So stuff like that. So it's not like they're just an AM team that is kind of moving up pieces of them. They really are kind of pick and choose from different AM teams that have played together. Actually, I just want to ask you real quick, do you feel so like in the first hour of the show, you really talked about how you were like employee number 2, you took a super methodical approach to forming your roster and stuff like that. Is this like in any way some sort of validation that like your culture seems set in stone? You really picked players that are just, nose to the grindstone. It doesn't seem like any of these inconsistencies that are happening in these other rosters are happening with Minnesota. I mean, it's got to be some sort of validation in that the process you took to form your roster is somewhat paying off, right?
Yeah, I honestly, this sounds so dumb. I get emotional thinking about it. I'm so proud of our guys because like
that's so awesome.
We chose them for these reasons, and to like have that pit in your stomach, like, well, I think that this could happen, and I could see these guys doing this, but then to watch them do that. To perform, obviously wanted to win in Atlanta, didn't, but we proved that we're right there, right? And I think like just seeing that it's not really like a validation thing as much as I'm truly happy for those individuals that are on our team because I'm seeing them face to face every day, and that's part of like the culture too. And it sounds dumb because yes, you can practice this game, you could be on a pro team from anywhere as long as you got some good internet. Like let's fry, right? But the team chemistry and the team bonding that's happening here every day at the facility, like we see them, they see us, they see each other, they go to the gym together, they go out to eat together. Like there's a real bond that's there. And so knowing that and like just seeing how cool that is just off of like selecting these guys and hoping that they do that, like they're doing it, and just seeing that, I'm so proud of them just in what they've been able to do in a short period of time. And I know it's like literally this is the beginning. Like it feels like we're in the thick of it now, but it's really just the beginning here, right? And so it's not really a validation because I don't really care too much like what the community thinks. Obviously, it makes me happy when we come out with a roster and some people are like trash, and then like we perform. Like it feels good, obviously, but I'm not too concerned with that as much as I'm concerned with like how our players are thinking and feeling. How are they gelling together? Like it seems like good vibes. So let's just ride that, you know? So I'm really proud of how the guys have performed so far.
That's it's just super cool to hear. So not only do you have like a culture that's set in place, but you guys also have the best branding in the CDL. So moving forward,
I'm so biased, so I couldn't say
it's so cool
saying that. Look at
oh, it's friggin' awesome.
That hat
so
is
cool.
ridiculously dope.
This little bomber jacket, bro, with the little eye. Dude, shout out to Dane. He's the one, he works with us now. He's our art director. He's the one that, I mean, it was a team of people that kind of put this together, but he was mainly like the guy. Is just so proud
It's
of the
insane.
branding. Yeah.
It's so cool. All right, let's move on here to predictions for only like, you know, a half hour off course, whatever. So as we go into LA home series this weekend, we got Group A, we got Group B. I guess we can just start group by group. So, so moving on, it starts with Minnesota and Seattle, and then LAG and OGLA. So I'll go ahead and Kingdom. What are your thoughts here? What are you giving us in terms of predictions with Group A moving into this weekend?
Minnesota over Seattle, OGLA over LAG. Minnesota, I think, will punch the ticket to the semis against OGLA, and then I think OGLA will win out, and they'll also go from that group. I think the two coming out will be Minnesota and OGLA. It's the first time I'm rooting against my home team, and I think that Seattle will beat LAG, and they'll get a win, but I think they'll get beat by OGLA. Now, that to me, a lot of people are saying they see the potential of Seattle beating Minnesota. I'm not sold on that. I just think Minnesota is too consistent right now for me to predict that. And Seattle's been the opposite, you know, inconsistent. And then LAG is a brand new team. OGLA, they've been grinding for this. Everybody keeps saying they're better on scrims, they're better in scrims, they're better in scrims. They couldn't show it at, I mean, but they were close with Florida, but they couldn't show it in Atlanta. But I think this is their opportunity. And honestly, for this to be their homestead, if I'm OGLA, I'm like, we're winning this. Like, that's the, I mean, of course, you're pro players. And like Ashley said, that's what you go in with that mindset. But I'm honestly going into this event like, we're winning this event in LA. You know, Pat's not on their team anymore. So everybody's going to be rooting for us, for Optic Gaming LA. We're the home team. Like, we're the Lakers. They're the Clippers. We're going to make this happen. And if I'm OGLA, I'm taking aim for Minnesota and FaZe or Dallas, whoever they meet in the other side. But I'd be prepared to play. I mean, you got to prepare for everybody, but I'd be very well prepared to play Minnesota if I was OGLA.
Cool. Yeah.
That's just
Ashley, you don't have to. I mean, obviously,
Am I lame
Minnesota.
if I just come on here like, I think we're gonna win?
What do you think in the other? What do you think in the Battle of LA? What do you think's going on over there?
I think this is where OGLA turns it around. Obviously, I mean, you kind of never know what you're gonna get with LA Gorillas, like, and that's even true on the roster side of things. I mean, they have the potential to shock the world. Maybe I'm not sure if it would be shock the world because you know OGLA is struggling as well, but like you never really know. But just with like the amount of polish that I think OGLA is going to have, even though they haven't won a match this season yet, you know, they're going to. I think that's kind of been the expectation with this roster is that, I mean, you have like Slasher, Kenny, TJ Dashy, JCap, like they're going to figure this out. They're going to start to click at some point, or they're going to make a change that enables the click. Whoa, I said enable. I didn't even mean to say that. Yo, what if? No, I'm just kidding. They're going to turn around at some point. And I think that LA Gorillas, you know, that offers an opportunity for them to really kind of just get out of neutral, start going. I mean, obviously, I think and hope obviously that we will, beat Seattle. We're not taking them lightly. Even talking to the guys around the HQ, like they're like, we're preparing, like we think we could take this event, but we are preparing one opponent at a time. Like,
yeah,
we are ready for this Seattle match. Even talking to the coaches, like the second you start taking people lightly, that's when you offer yourself up, right? And so, just purely focused one match at a time, but obviously aware of the whole bracket and the whole like everything that we want to accomplish. Because if you want to win, you have to like win out, right? So,
yep,
I could see us beating Seattle. I think I'm not sure. I mean, obviously, like role wise, I'm not even sure that Pander offers much more than Enable does, but maybe he just balls out. I don't know. Who knows? Like maybe he just goes crazy this weekend and really improves that team. But
yeah,
even then, I just feel like with how they play and how consistent we've been lately, like we have a good opportunity to win against them. And then us versus OGLA, I'd be lying if I said like, first of all, that I ever could have predicted that this would happen. Like I said, the whole like 1 year ago thing. But second of
Yeah.
all, like they're a good team. Yes, they
Yep.
haven't won yet, but they are primed to turn it around. And I
Yep.
hope it's not against us, right? I hope it's, and that's just me being frank. Like I hope that they, I mean, I'm sure it'll be good games. Like I think they do look better in scrims than they've shown. But we'll have to see kind of how it goes. So obviously, hope we beat Seattle. Hope we beat OGLA. Hope we go on into the playing deep on Sunday. Hope I'm at Billy's all weekend, like rooting on with you guys here
Yeah.
in Minnesota. So yeah, I think we'll see what happens come this weekend, but we're not taking anyone lightly.
What I'll say going into Group A, I have the same exact bracket as Kingdom. It's literally match for match. It's the same exact thing. One thing that I'll point on is, somebody who watches hours and hours worth of scrims is that I think you guys will handle Seattle, but I will say that you guys have got a heck of a battle on your hands with Octane. I mean, he's one of the top 3 or 4 players in the game right now.
Assault and Octane AR battles.
Yeah, absolutely. That's like one of those storylines that I'm super looking forward to coming into this weekend. I think your SMG play is so good that, that'll take care of itself. But in terms of the bracket overall, when you just look at the names that are on OGLA with Dashy and Kenny and Slasher and TJ, and it's just like, you're right. Sooner or later, they have to put something together. I mean, I would have never guessed that through, all of these events so far in opening weekend, they would have 0 points. I mean, there's no way that they stay there forever. Now, will they be able to make up the distance that they already have to make up to get into champs? That's a different story. But yeah, I agree that Minnesota and OGLA make it out. I think there are some interesting. So if Minnesota is able to beat Seattle and OGLA is able to beat LAG, I think that's going to be a great matchup, Minnesota and OGLA, because it'll really provide us with a test for OGLA. Like, have they made that next step? Are they able to compete there yet? Or do they still have to improve a little bit and make changes? So that's another interesting storyline coming out of Group A. As we move on to Group B, which is just an insane group, right? There's so much talent in Group B.
That's tough, man.
It's insane. We started with Kingdom last time. So, Midnight, what are you feeling? Group B, FaZe and Mutineers, and then Dallas and New York.
Honestly, I love that the finals from the previous, obviously, Atlanta home series is happening right away. Like,
Me too.
I'm pretty sure, unless I'm mistaken, that's the first match on the
I think it is the
so
first
it'll
match.
be cool to kind of see the day start hot. I think Florida, I view like, especially, before the season started, I viewed like maybe Florida and our roster kind of similarly, like kind of dark horse type of team that you're not really gonna super expect to go crazy right away, but they have like, the team to do it. They have great staff over there. Like they know what they're doing, and they proved that this last week. And even though I don't think anyone could have really predicted that, so I think Atlanta is going to take Florida. I'll be interested to see kind of how Florida kind of follows, their Atlanta performance. But I think overall, like, once FaZe turns it on, and if you're not perfect, you're dust, right? So
Yeah.
And then obviously like Dallas versus New York. I think Dallas is going to play really well this weekend. I think that time off, them not being in Atlanta, really is going to, probably helped them. I think a lot of folks had the same kind of questions about Minnesota and had Paris kind of beating us because they had seen Paris more recently in London, and then they weren't sure like how hard we'd really been working in that time off period. I mean, you have like Dallas is this kind of similar to us. They have a team full of grinders. If they're not there, they're especially going to grind to get there. So I think Dallas takes New York, and then can I see the bracket again? Who did I? Is it okay? Sorry. Yeah. So Atlanta versus Dallas at that point.
That's a tough one.
I don't know. I feel like Dallas will play them close, but I think Atlanta is just so fast. It'll be cool to see like their subs play each other. That'll be really an interesting battle for me to see, just like how they really match up with each other. But I think FaZe takes that too.
The search and destroy should be interesting there.
Yeah, that's going to be gnarly. Like, I mean, Atlanta's surge is just so crazy.
Yeah. But coming into the league, Dallas was touted as like one of the most, kind of like well polished search games. Like they just like even in our first show, I remember me and Icon were like, oh man, Dallas just has search and destroy over the Huntsman, and it was like, and then Scump decides to drop a 2.13, and it's like, oh okay, well.
Yeah, it's hard to predict these things sometimes. I mean, you don't know until it starts happening. But I mean, like a lot of people have been like talking trash on Dallas, saying they're onliners or whatever. I don't think that's true. I think that they're going to play pretty well this weekend. I think they'll be in the mix, and it's going to be an interesting weekend.
Yeah, one thing that I'll say is just real quick, Kingdom, before we get to your breakdown. That first matchup, I know that like everybody's really excited for Atlanta and Florida, kind of a rematch of the last finals. And I agree. I think it's going to be an interesting match to watch. But one thing that I'll caution is that I think this isn't going to go like it did the last time. I think, well, I guess it'll go similarly, honestly. But going into that, remember, Florida had the chance to warm up, right? So coming off of that Sunday, when you're the team that's not playing and you don't really have that time to get going, like we talked with the Tatch last weekend, where you can warm up backstage with your communication, all that stuff, all you want, but you don't really have the opportunity to really warm up like you get on main stage. Whereas as we went into that weekend with Florida and Chicago, Florida was already warm. They had already played, so they kind of hit the ground running there. So that's just something to think about. I think with both of these teams fresh and not really being on the main stage and having an opportunity to warm up, I don't know. I just think this will be a quick 3-0 for Atlanta. I don't quite see the performance out of Florida, or at least I'm not sold there yet. But we'll see where it goes. So, Kingdom, on your bracket, what do you think? How you feeling?
So, for FaZe versus Florida, I have FaZe, but I don't have it being easy. I think Florida was so elated with the emotions of beating Chicago. Sometimes, I mean, I don't know if you guys watch like ESPN highlights of NCAA teams, you know what I'm saying? But it's like I've recently, like Duke got beat by some not even ranked team, and it was like they flooded the floor and went crazy and just they're going cheering and going bananas, and the whole team's out there because they did anything special. Like their record was still worse. They probably were not going to beat them in March Madness, but they beat them, and that was a big deal. And I think there was so much emotion on that moment where Pristini and Arcides face off, and then Pristini wins and he talks trash, but then he's got to like calm down and cry with his brother. And then they probably talked behind the stages because there was like a 45 minutes before the finals because of the hype battle. And so I think it, like what happens is when your emotions get that high, it's almost like you won an event and then you still slowly start to just deflate. And I think they went into the finals against FaZe and they didn't have anything left. Like they were just, FaZe is hungry, excited, animated. We just pulled off a reverse sweep, and same thing that Florida did. But when Florida did it, it had this added, we're underdogs. We weren't supposed to beat them.
We're not supposed to be here.
Yeah, we stopped the heroes from being beaten, making it. We stopped the whole FaZe versus Chicago thing, and you guys underrated it. Like there was so much going on emotionally that I just think we didn't see the best of them in the finals. So they are. I think I have FaZe winning because I think FaZe right now is the best team in the league because they're not just the best in raw skill. They have the will for it. They have the right attitude. They approach the game correctly. I mean, you have to look for flaws in that team, which they have, but you have to look for them. And then when it comes to Dallas versus New York, man, this is a rough one, guys. seeing that this is where New York was placed in this tournament, it hurt my feelings, because I was like,
You want to see them bounce back a little bit.
They may actually go home with no points. Like it and it's not what anybody wants to see for this team. Like they may actually lose to Dallas and then lose to the Mutineers or FaZe. Mutineers are worthy of making a losers bracket run, of losing to FaZe and then beating Dallas and New York and making it. I mean, they've showed us that we can't count them out. I don't think you can count out any team. I think, like Midnight said, you prepare one match at a time. I don't know if it was you, Midnight. I don't remember what I was watching, probably an interview or something, but it was like somebody said, you have 5 good world-class players per team, and any of them can pop off at any moment. Like any of them can just, like, Pander just got engaged. He just got picked up as a pro now. He's on the team. He could just have the event of his life. You never know. Like you can prepare for a team. And so I'm still going to say, though, that at the end of the day, it'll be FaZe and Dallas making it out. Mutineers are going to give it a run for their money. New York, they're in a pickle. They're going to need to come out super duper strong, because they're in a pickle when it comes to their points, when it comes to the team. Attach and everybody else has been very honest and open about the fact that it's mostly like they're just not on the same page. And when you hear that, like we heard that from the Huntsmen, but it's like, well, that was obvious to us. You guys weren't playing your game. When you're on the same page, you're one of the scariest teams in the league. For New York, they can't afford to not be on the same page. Like that's just Coach Bobble. Like Revan's got to get in there and be like, all right, look, guys, like you saw what happened in LA to the Gorillas. That could happen to this team after LA if we don't get some points and if we don't win some matches. I mean, and who knows? Crowder said if OGLA doesn't outright win this event, they're making a change. Like that was his opinion. So it's going to be interesting.
Sure. Yeah. I think and to the point that you guys made at the beginning of this, like it is now, it doesn't seem like it now when you're looking at the standings, because there's still so much contention there, especially in the middle, but like these next few tournaments are really going to shape things. And this is when you need to be just consistently getting those points. Like I said, yes, it sucks that Rokkr, we went in, we were right there. We could have literally like 3-0'd FaZe right there. Or even if we, we regain for the hard point, or even like if the search just went a different way, we could have been in the finals. Like,
right.
It's every game just has so much weight now. And I think like you'll start to realize that the more the season goes on, the more that the champs picture kind of gets shaped. This is the time that if you are struggling, you need to make a change. I don't see New York benefiting too much from bouncing in happy for Trey. I think, after if they that roster there, and I thought this kind of about them before the season started, like if they don't succeed quickly, then it's going to go a little bad. And if they don't succeed now after making this change, it could get worse, so we'll have to see how it shapes out. They are in a tough freaking pool, man, or not a pool, but like a group.
Bracket,
they're in a tough freaking bracket there. But I mean, you got to hit the regain button at some point. You never know when it could happen. So we'll see how it goes. But I think Dallas will come out pretty hot. And I know Atlanta, like they 3-0'd Dallas before 3-1. It was
3-0.
Yeah, it was a convincing win. So I think Dallas is wants another piece of that to try and get at them. But we'll have to see how it goes. I'm pretty excited for the weekend.
It's going to be phenomenal. Great matches.
Yeah, 1000%. My predictions, real quick, just to roll through it. I think Atlanta beats Florida. I think Dallas beats New York, just like probably what most people would say. I do think I'm not completely sold on Florida. I think New York's going to beat them. I think Florida's going to go 0-2. I just think that New York has something to prove. Like it's New York's one of those teams where like it's do or die time, right? Like it's not like in the NBA, you can go 42-40 and get an 8 seed and make the playoffs or something, right? Like, like we're talking the third tournament here, and you got to make something happen. So I think they'll be super hyper focused going into this weekend. I still think Atlanta and Dallas are the teams that make it out. But if I had to make a hot take per se, I'm not sold on Florida yet. I think it can happen, but I just don't know if I'm there yet. So that's how I'm feeling.
Nice. I love the kind of difference in opinions. I love kind of hearing both perspectives. I truly see both of your perspectives and say, oh yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
And you're just like, I just want Minnesota to win.
Go Rokkr.
Look, I've believed in this team since we formed it. It's not going to stop now. I believe we could win this weekend. You know, I'm not saying we're going to, but I believe that we can, and I'm excited to see, you know, how the matches shake out. And truly, like, I think Maven might have pointed this out. Like, after seeing Florida have that, you know, that good weekend, and yeah, they did hit that high dopamine and make it into the finals. I'm like, oh my god, you know, like, it's crazy. You know, maybe that affected them in the finals there, but I think all these matches have so much weight. The rosters, I mean, yeah, you look at some of them, you're like, ooh, they're struggling. But like, truly, even some of those like mid-range teams that are kind of like sitting there with 40 points right now, like, they have the roster to win. And you know, like nobody expected Florida to beat Huntsman. If you had one bad series, like, there's no losers bracket on Sunday. Like, you're out.
Yeah, there are. One thing I'll add on top of that is that right now, you know, you're just talking about all those teams that have like 30, 40 points. Most people would say that there are two teams that are pretty safe, right? With Chicago with 90 and Atlanta with 70. But I think this is your guys' opportunity to join that group. To, you know, if you get 30, 40, 50 points here, and now all of a sudden you guys are sitting there at 70, and you still have that group of teams that's there at 30, 40. So now you've kind of distanced yourselves. And I know there's a lot more of the season to be played, but that's kind of when I look at, you know, a potential recap podcast next week with what I'm thinking where standings might be. I don't know. That's just something I've got feeling in the back of my mind.
Yeah, I mean, we're right there. I'm proud of our guys. I don't want to get repetitive with it, but I mean, we've only lost twice, and it was to, in my opinion, the two best teams in the league. So we can only really keep going up from here, right? So I think, you know, even you look at Paris sitting pretty at third, like, I don't think anyone expected that. Like,
nobody.
That's kind of, and they, you know, they didn't have the best, you know, Atlanta series, so people kind of stopped talking about them. But they got a lot of points at the beginning of the season. Like,
they got 20 in Minnesota.
Obviously they're not hyped. You know, I'm sure after Atlanta that helps them kind of refocus a little bit. But yeah, they're sitting right there. And I think too, if you like yes, winning is paramount, and if you get those extra 10 points for winning the tournament, like, that's amazing. But if you can just show up, get some wins as you go, you're at least setting yourself up to be in the position. But I think, and this just goes back to, you know, almost any team being able to win at any time, like, that's where we're really going to start to see, I think, those surprises and those evening outs of the points, or maybe we will start to see like clear, distinct top 4, top 3, like, separation.
Cool. Kingdom, going in, who's going to win? Semifinals, finals, who you got? Who's taking it home?
My finals is going to be, I think so who's going to, based on my bracket, Minnesota would face Dallas or FaZe in the first round. I don't remember. But I think, because I had Minnesota being the winner, so they would face Dallas.
Winner bracket of Group A faces losers bracket of Group B, yeah. They'd
face Dallas, and then let's say OGLA would face FaZe. Definitely, I think FaZe would go forward. Honestly, this will be my one interesting prediction, maybe, that people might think. I do think that Dallas could win this event, but I think the event they're gonna win potentially is the Dallas event. And it'll be them in Chicago in the final, maybe. But for this event, I'm going to pick Minnesota to go to the final and face off against FaZe. And that's a hard pick. I do think the FaZe team is capable of pulling off a two-peat. And I think Minnesota is capable of winning an event. And even though Ashley's on the show right now,
listen.
No. Right now, I'm gonna give the edge to FaZe. I've been a secret fan of the Rokkr, like watching all the content and saying this team's gonna do better than you think. This team's gonna do better than you think. But I'm also the person that's kind of like, if Chicago gets second place at the next 3 tournaments, they're going to basically make it to champs, because of the points they already have. That's the kind of stuff I'm looking at. And I'm looking at Minnesota. And honestly, Minnesota is a team that's capable of making every single semifinals that every home series they go to with what they've shown us so far. I know we're only a couple events in. But FaZe, they still have the little bit of factor where teams, and I don't know, Ashley can say, I don't know if teams, how do you counter what they do? Everybody's like, well, for the Huntsmen, you counter Envoy. You pay attention to Envoy. Everybody said that, or Envoy. And then for, I don't know, maybe certain teams like Seattle, you play fast, and maybe they can't keep up when it comes to like search or something. But then when you're going up against FaZe, I don't know what teams are looking at. Like can you slow down any of those players? Is there and maybe it's just play your game so well. And that's what I thought Minnesota was going to be able to do. And when you guys were up on FaZe, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to love talking about this.
Yeah.
I was like, this.
And I felt like when we went up 2-0, it wasn't because somebody was crapping the bed on FaZe, right? Like, I felt like they were hanging, it was close-ish, except for the search wasn't that close. But like, when we are playing, firing on all cylinders and not making mistakes, we're right there with them, right? And so, and that's, I think, and I don't want to repeat myself too much, but like, that's one of the things that kind of gives us a little bit of comfort after, obviously taking a hard L and a reverse sweep. Like, we feel like, especially that Hackney Dom, like we made a mistake. And so, those things can be fixed, on the back end. And I think like when you're thinking about it in terms of who could win this whole thing, right? Like, I feel like some of these teams, especially at the top, like they're so closely matched that it's hard to predict, really. Like,
it's true.
And I mean this, I hope this doesn't come off the wrong way. I don't even think we've seen FaZe play the best that they can yet. Like, not that someone's crapping I don't. You say not agree?
No, I said I'd agree. Yeah,
they're not at their ceiling.
They're not even in their final form yet. Neither are we. So we're gonna kind of see what that looks like as the season goes, and that's what's really exciting to me. So I'd have to kind of sit down for a very long time with our coaches and just kind of pick their brains about how do you think we do this. But just from my like perspective, I heard Maven or say it on broadcast. One of the casters. I feel bad for not remembering who, but he was saying, Minnesota needs to not get too hyper aggressive and play to FaZe's speediness because, that's FaZe's specialty, is playing really fast and being in your face. Their subs are just so aggressive and so talented that it's hard to counter that with aggression. So you need to pull back. You need to play your game. You need to play to your strengths. And, hopefully we can do that. I do think like their sub duo is just insane. I, obviously super biased, very fond of Asim and Alex. I think especially Alex, like his KD is like shown it, and that's not easy to do in this game as a submachine gun player. Like if you look at the top 10 KDs in the league, most of them are main ARs or at least AR players. And to be a sub in the league and dropping those numbers and, getting in those hills quick, like that's crazy. So I think, for a team to beat FaZe, you have to at the very least try to hang with their subs, but also play to your team's strengths, whatever that is, whichever team you are. So I don't know. Like I said, I think, and I don't mean it in a bad way, but I think FaZe is not even in their final form. I don't think we are either.
That's a compliment.
Yeah, we're still like in the beginning of this thing. So I'm just excited to see like the matches as they come.
Yeah, I'd say just real quick, kind of going on top of what you guys said. My finals, I think Atlanta handles OGLA fairly easily. I actually think you guys beat Dallas. I just want to see Dallas prove it. I want to see Shotzi have a good tournament and Illy play at that top 5 player role like he's has the potential to do. But until I see that happen, it almost happened last time they played Chicago. But until I see that, I'm just gonna stick with Minnesota because you guys have proven it. You've shown up in the bright lights and stuff like that. So that's where I'll stay. So I think Atlanta and Minnesota will be in the finals, and I think Atlanta wins. Again, kind of the same thing. Until somebody proves that they can beat them, it's really hard not to say that they would, end up, winning the tournament there. So those are my suggestions. that's what I think in terms of predictions moving forward. So we'll see what happens.
We'll see. All right, guys. We're gonna spend the next like 10 to 14 minutes. We'll go back and forth, Icon. So if you have some questions from Twitter or chat, I'll start with a question, and then you can throw out a question, and we'll just ask. We're gonna ask Ashley some questions, and then when we get to 9:30 Eastern, we're gonna hard stop. So it's about 14 minutes.
Because I got a bedtime, so that's helpful for me.
Good for you.
Yeah.
Okay, so I know I'm not gonna get to ask all of these. So one of them that I've been wanting to ask is, like, over the years, you've been fairly open about like whether it was physical trauma you're dealing with, emotional, like mental challenges, and you've told your story about how your childhood was and the things that happened and the things you dealt with and going to counseling and all that in high school. And then on top of that, you got picked up as an esports player for Optic in 2010, I believe, and they drop the whole team except you, and then you become one of their snipers, and then they drop all the snipers except you, and then you're with the organization, and you're like, you know what, I'm going to try to move out of Minnesota, and I'm going to go somewhere else and do this, and then you're in the wrong city, and you've got to move to the right city, and all this kind of stuff, and then you wind up back at home wondering what you're going to do with your life, and now you are who you are. Like, how in the midst of all of that do you stay so balanced? Because the demands of content creation, like smiling on camera and having a positive attitude, but you've always been like not shy about, like, when you're not feeling good, you'll say that, like, how have you remained balanced through all of that, like mentally?
Yeah, I think, it's hard for me to, I have a hard time like talking up my own self, but like I feel like one of the best things about content creation and being like on YouTube and connected on social media with people is when you're genuine, you are gonna end up connecting with those other people on a way that like they just don't see that often. And I think more people should be like that. You should be open and genuine, because whatever you're facing in your life, whether it's a struggle or something happy, there's other people going through that same thing, you know what I mean, or having that same stuff happen to them. So for me, it's just been staying who I am, because that's super easy for me. Like, I just am me. Like, it sounds like pretty easy. I just got to be me. But I think, like, going through all the different like trials and tribulations, I guess, if you will, like, it's just understanding that, and this is just weird and something that obviously has been proven right to me a few times, is if I keep doing what I want to do, which I know I can do, I'm going to be okay. And not a lot of people are comfortable with that, right? If you're sitting there like, man, I really want to do this, like, do it then. Like, you can do it. And yes, you might fail.
Right.
It might suck. You're going to have moments where you're going to want to quit. You're going to have moments where you're like, I don't know if this is what I should be doing. But you just got to keep doing it, especially if you love it, because it's that genuineness that keeps you going through it, right? If you're happy doing it, or if you're, connecting on a level with whoever you're doing it with, or you're for, like, that's how you keep the motivation to keep doing it. So for me, esports, Call of Duty especially, something that I'm super passionate about, it just seems easy to me to just like, oh yeah, let's make a Call of Duty video, or oh yeah, I'll stream some COD, or hey, let's join this Call of Duty franchise, it's brand new, sounds like fun, like I'm having a good time with it every single day. Like, it's a literal dream existence, and it's, it's rare, obviously. Like, I wish this same thing that's happened to me could happen to so many other people, but it can't. But no matter what it is for you, if it's like, I can't even think of another hobby, but like, find your thing, find your niche, find your stream, and then just like float down it, man. Like, that's the best thing that I could tell people to do is, just stay yourself though, stay genuine, stay grounded throughout everything, whether it's, bad stuff's happening, good stuff's happening, make sure you stay you, because that's what's really going to navigate you through all of that.
A wise man once told me that the best thing you can do as a content creator is determine who you are and what you're going to portray, and then be that person, and don't ever change. Like, it was kind of like, not don't change and evolve as a person, but don't make like sharp right turns or left turns in who you are, who you portray to your community. And like, I'll ask you a question about that wise person in a second, but I'm gonna pass it over to Icon.
All right. So this is a response that we got on Twitter when we asked, if anybody had questions for you. But Darth Crush said, his ad is at Crush Sniper. He said, how hard was it for you to transition from being like when you were with Optic, being that content creator to kind of more of like a management role? Like, was that something that you struggled with, or it sounds to me like you flowed into it fairly easily, fairly nicely, but was that transition difficult, or what was that transition from content creator over to director of content? Like, how was that transition for you?
Really good. I mean, honestly, definitely different jobs, but definitely kind of similar too. Like, there's still like you want your finger on the pulse of the community to know like what do they want to see. So it's the same type of thing of like, oh, I know like I love COD, I'm good at streaming COD, or I know what we're gonna work on like with Optic at the time. Like, we were kind of bending to what we thought like people wanted to see, and so this is kind of that too, like making sure that we instill in our team, our staff, our social media, our content, our fandom, this culture that, and I hate even because like every team comes in and they're like, we want a good culture, we hope it happens. Like, everyone's gonna say that, but like we truly like we're building it as we're paving the road as we're driving down it, right? So that's been really exciting to me. And one parallel that I could draw to it was, when I was like a content creator with Optic or streaming and doing my own thing, like I kind of had that same feeling. I'm like, I'm floating down the river here and it's great. Some things are going great, some things aren't. But overall, like I know which direction I'm going, and it kind of ties back into like the stay you during all of that. And that is where I've drawn a lot of like parallels with this too. Like, we're all like forming this thing as we're going. And that's like so exciting to me. So it's kind of a similar vibe. I mean, obviously, like being a part of Optic, it was kind of like a startup vibe, if you can consider a Call of Duty team like a startup vibe. But it kind of is. There's things that you're implementing and doing and discovering as you go, and this is kind of that too. Like, we're discovering who we are as a brand. We're trying to, like I said, implement that in every facet, and that's one of the cool things. It's not all easy though. I mean, obviously, just like personally for me, had a really interesting year with some health stuff, so that made it really difficult. Obviously, being working from home and being my own boss for like 8 years, and then transitioning to like, yeah, now I technically have a boss, but like I just don't view it in that situation because I've been such like an independent, like self-starter like person that I don't really view like anybody at the company as like, the ladder or whatever. Like, I don't really like, I just see everyone as like the same, which I don't know is a good thing or a bad thing, but like that's been interesting to me, is to see like how we're building this staff out, going from my own independent think tank with my own brand, or being a part of Optic where everyone just kind of did cool stuff, and coming into a little bit of a more structured environment and still bringing like, what I feel like I can bring to the table. It's been awesome. It's been not like super simple because obviously it's a huge life change, but it's been incredible. Like, I've learned so much already, and I know like we're still just going to keep building this thing. So it's been awesome.
So I'll put this. Oh, go ahead. Sorry.
No, I
Go ahead.
I was just gonna say that's super cool. It seems like this fell right into place for you. It feels like you're living, like if you could have said a year ago what your perfect job description would be, I mean, it sounds like you're doing it. So that's super cool to see.
100%. Yeah. I mean, if you would have asked me a year ago, I would have just been like, oh man, I hope I hit like a bunch of subs on Twitch, I guess. Like, that'd be cool. But like, that's, when I'm thinking about like the big picture and because everyone should always be evolving. Like, you should always be evolving to the next thing, whether you're evolving your content, if that's what you're doing, or evolving your business, or you're an entrepreneur, like that needs to kind of change and evolve, right? So I couldn't, like I said, I couldn't have even like thought of this in my dreams of like cool stuff I wanted to happen.
So yeah, and you're doing it very well. It was funny because before the show we were kind of chatting, and I just said, this is when you weren't here yet, and I just was like, I was like, she could run a team one day, and I don't. It's interesting because what you're showing is such a different side of Midnight. Like, honestly, this is probably something you maybe think has been portrayed to the community for a long time, but I like when you took this job, I was like, head of content, that makes sense. But then when you started talking about the managerial aspects of what you were doing, and then you're telling stories about, yeah, I moved this camera crew over here and this camera crew over here, and we split it up, and it gave me a picture into kind of who you really are and what you really want to do with the kind of latter part of your career in gaming. And I'm excited for you. I'm going to ask one quick question, and then Icon's got one more before we're done. Mine is that wise person that I was talking about basically has given me so much advice over the years, randomly calling into our podcast, hitting me up on Skype, sending me DMs when he notices that I'm not being myself or something. And that's Hector. And I kind of want to just ask, who is Hector Rodriguez to you?
Heck, I got goosebumps. Dude, I get way too into this stuff. Hector to me is my brother. He's my mentor. He's someone that even like to this day, like if I called him, I know he'd answer. If he called me, he knows I'd answer. Like if I ever need anything, and he's told me so much, like if you ever need advice or like just to bounce something off of me or just want my take or want to even just like, you know, tell me what's up, like you can do that. And I know like every time like we see each other now, it's all love. It is weird to like go from seeing him so regularly and being around him, and like his attitude, especially like towards creativity and content, is infectious, right? Like it's like you just step into the hex quarters and you're like, this is like, I shouldn't even be here unless I'm creating. Like that's the vibe. It's like he's done just such a tremendous job of like instilling that in so many people around him and helping those people build themselves up. But he, you know, to me, he's a builder. He's somebody who helps others build, but he builds himself. Like you were watching him do it again now. We are literally witnessing him do it again. Like with everything he built at Optic Gaming. And I mean and two, for like the past couple years from like, that's got to be tough, man. Like I never like really talked to him too deeply about that, but like I can't imagine how that feels. And from his perspective, if I was hurting as much as I couldn't imagine how he was feeling, right? So, but now to see him bounce mother freaking back, dude, like it's awesome. It's so Hector to me is somebody who's relentlessly himself. He's my brother, he's my mentor, and I just, you know, I'm really happy for him. I'm really proud. It was tough for me to, because I called him obviously before I left officially, or like ended my stuff with Optic. I secretly wanted his like blessing because I knew about this Minnesota opportunity, and I was like, listen, Hector, like I've loved everything. I've loved the opportunity, but I have to go do this. Like I have to. And he's like, do it. You're an idiot if you don't do it, basically. And I was like, duh. Like, I like he knew that this opportunity was like so for me as well, right? So it's so weird to not be on the same team as him, to be in the same like, you know, current family as him. We obviously have that family history together at Optic, but it's also really cool to, I mean, I got to imagine it's cool for him to see me thriving. It's cool for me to see him thriving, and it's nothing but love, right? Like it's weird because you've spent so much time in the company and like the presence, even if it's just online and everything he has to say, like you're in like his infectious attitude all the time. And now it's weird to kind of look at his vlogs and be like, oh, like this is like what he's doing now. That's cool. Like it's awesome. So Hector, to me, I know I answer your questions in a super long way and we have to go soon, but
it's awesome.
Hector's awesome to me. He's truly a mentor and a brother.
Same. Go ahead,
that's so cool. I think that's the perfect way to end. So that's a phenomenal answer. Talking about what you've been through, how you got into where you are. That's awesome. So yeah, we'll go ahead. We'll leave it there. That's so cool.
Okay. So thank you for saying all of that, Ashley. I think one of the things people don't know about him is how much he doesn't look for adoration, pats on the back, you know, outward expressions of how great he is. He doesn't look for it at all. He doesn't mind it. He just wants to help people. Like, and that's, of all the things I've learned in COD, I look around, I see, you know, I see Maniac in Florida, I see you in Minnesota, I see Hitch sitting there with energy, and Imbo's being there, and like Hector has done such an amazing job with so many players. He's imprinted players like Clayster and things like that, and had such an amazing impact on our esport. It's just amazing. And so anytime somebody can talk about it, I love to hear it. So thank you for sharing. Thank you as well just for being on the show, man. This has been great. Like this 2 hours kind of breezed by. Like,
Yeah, that's really quick. I mean, I talk a lot, so I'm sorry about that. I've like listeners,
You're-
viewers who are
yeah.
like, dude, did she ever stop? All they asked is how's your day? Like, what?
they're probably just happy I'm not filling all that space. So
I suppose.
I
I
talk
guess
to you.
if you do have COD pros on a lot, some of them aren't the most chatty, so it can
This
be.
is very true.
It's a carry. It's a carry for sure. But thank you
We
so much
had
for having me on. I'm gonna listen to this. I'm gonna put this in rotation with the other CDL shows that I listen to in my car on the way to work. So I'm
Awesome.
stoked.
Super
Well, I
cool.
appreciate it. And thank you, of course, Icon, for co-hosting. Thank you, Goalie, the GOAT producer.
Yes, sir.
The best producer in the land, makes it easy. We just talk to each other, and he does
You made it
everything
look
else.
really pretty. All I had to do was sit here. I mean, I know I'm the guest, but like I literally just sat here and talked. So
Should we mention it's purple and blue?
like
Like
it
it matches
branding.
the color.
honestly, like my branding kind of matches the blue and purple of the Rokkr.
Yeah,
You guys
see?
got it going on. It's just a great color combo.
It's a great vibe. All right. So thank you very much for coming on. Thank you, Icon. Thank you, everybody that's watched. This will be on YouTube as soon as possible. And I want to wait till the week. We have our guest for next week, but I'm going to wait to announce it. But we will be doing the LA home series recap. So we look forward to seeing you guys next week. And we're looking forward to some great matches in Los Angeles. Peace out, guys.
See you guys.
Peace, guys.